This is the Fertile Mindset podcast, where we explore all the emotional aspects of fertility to support you on your path to parenthood. My name is Sarah Holland. I'm the Fertile Mindset coach and a mother to 2 children after my own fertility challenges. I hope you find all the support and inspiration you need within this podcast to carry you forward on your fertility journey towards your own successful outcome. It's also my wish that through listening to these episodes, you rediscover how to enjoy life now and live it to the full while you wait for your baby. Now, let's begin today's episode. Hello and welcome back to the Fertile Mindset podcast. I have a lovely episode for you today, plus a little bit of an announcement to make about the podcast. Before I introduce who I'm talking to today, I want you to know that this will be the last episode, but only for a short time, while we take a break to plan and record more. I have some amazing guests booked in that I can't wait to speak with and share our conversations with you. And I'm sure you're going to love what's coming next after our short break. As always, I want this podcast to be a support for whatever you need and whatever is going on in your own fertility journey and life. So if you have any suggestions for either topics you'd like me to talk about or guests too that you'd like to see on the podcast, then do get in touch. Contact Jan, that's Jan, at fertilemindset.com. Jan joined the Fertile Mindset team a few months ago and is helping me plan and create an amazing next run of Fertile Mindset podcast episodes. So do let her know what you would like to hear about from me and my guests, and we will do our best to bring you exactly the support you need. While we take a short break on the podcast, you can of course listen back to any of our now, with today's 71 episodes. Have a scroll through on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen in and see which titles jump out and speak to you. There is definitely lots for you to listen to while the podcast takes a break. And I'd also love to invite you into our new private Fertile Mindset support group on Facebook, where the topics we talk about here come to life with live chats, guidance from me in using EFT and mindset work for fertility, and a lovely warm community that you can be a part of. The group is called the Fertile Mindset Café, and it's open to anyone on a fertility journey of any kind looking for understanding and support. Come and join us there. Just search Fertile Mindset Café on Facebook under groups. And of course, my membership, the Fertile Mindset Sanctuary, is also still open and always welcoming new members. If you'd like to have access to unlimited fertility support from me and a real solution to fertility stress, you can read all about the Sanctuary membership at fertilemindset.com/sanctuary. Now on to today's episode, where I'm talking to the lovely Jo Dalziel. Jo is so warm and caring in her approach to fertility support. I know that you're going to love listening to us chat. I first met Jo when I was looking for fertility EFTers to speak at my summit a few months ago. And as I got to know her, I knew that I wanted to hear more about how she came to be working in fertility and the beautiful ways that she supports the emotional and mindset side of fertility. And that's what we did for the podcast. We had a great chat, which I am now sharing with you. Hello, Jo. Welcome to the Fertile Mindset podcast. It's really, really lovely to have you here. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, and really excited to be here. So thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, we finally get to speak. We've had cancellations and things, haven't we, with not being well and so on. And technology was really not our friend this morning when we tried to connect again, but we made it. And I'm so, so happy to be speaking to you again, because I was thinking back to, it must only be a few months ago that I'd even heard of you, Jo, when I was looking for people to speak at my summit, the Fertility Stress Solution Summit, which was all about fertility and EFT tapping. And I was looking everywhere for who else was using EFT for fertility like I do. And your name came up, and I was really, really pleased to get to know you, because you delivered a beautiful session at the summit and then gave amazing support to the people who took part in the summit. And what really struck me with you, Jo, is your empathy and understanding and real compassion that you have for people who are dealing with fertility issues, and that really comes through so strong, that you have that deep understanding, which is why I wanted to welcome you onto the podcast and share some more of that good feeling with everybody and that good support. So I'm so pleased that you had the time to join us here. Thank you, Jo.
Yeah, oh, lovely. Thank you. Yeah, here to spread some more love and support.
That's what it's all about. Absolutely. Because it can feel very lonely, can't it? When you're trying for a baby, and maybe your friends are as well, and your peers at work and whoever, everyone seems to be trying for a baby when you do. And if no one else is going through a similar journey to you, it can feel lonely. It can feel like there's nobody who really understands and gets how difficult this is. And people even start to doubt themselves, don't they? And think, well, am I just not coping with this very well? Should it be this stressful? And I think it's so important that people speak up about their experiences in the past as well, like it is for us. We've been through our fertility journeys, but the more we can keep sharing and encouraging and totally acknowledging that it's all normal, however you're feeling. So that's where I'd love to start with you, Jo, because we kind of scratched the surface at the summit with the kind of support you offer through your coaching and your EFT and everything else. But I'd love to hear a bit more about you and your own story and what brought you to work with fertility.
Yeah, well, I had my own fertility journey. It started kind of 14 years ago. And at the time I was cabin crew for a very large British airline. And at the time when I started flying, I was around 19, 20. And it became kind of common knowledge, I suppose, within the cabin crew role that trying to conceive was difficult. I knew lots and lots of people that had been through difficult fertility journeys, who used to work with people who were on fertility journeys. And then there were lots of kind of older crew that had been unsuccessful. So I had this thing set in my head, although I wasn't necessarily thinking about it at age 20, it's probably going to be difficult, although nobody else in my family had struggled. But I suppose a lot of it comes down to lifestyle. So there was lots of nights out of bed, lots of jet lag, lots of partying, not necessarily looking after myself that well. And then I suppose I got to about 30-ish when I met my partner now. And we decided that we'd like to start a family. And it just didn't happen. He also flies as well. So we've both got that thing now. Oh my goodness, we're in this together. This isn't going to be easy. So we had all of our tests and we were, they said, there's nothing wrong. It's just unexplained infertility, which of course you get that. Yay, we're okay. Followed by what is it then? We need to know what it is. You get that kind of very mixed bag of emotions. And so we tried for about 4 years. Obviously we weren't always in the same place at the right time of the month, but after 4 or 5 years we decided to go for IVF. So again, I had IVF treatment, and during the treatment, I didn't investigate it too much. I kind of went in with my head buried in the sand a little bit because I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I felt like I was going to open a can of worms if I started to really explore it. So I just kind of went in, followed what I was told to do. I had been obviously trying to help myself leading up to that, but I hadn't looked massively into the treatments. So in the end, we had an ICSI treatment, and at the point of embryo transfer, I was told that I had a grade C embryo. So that in my mind was, well, let's give it a go. This isn't going to work. So I had it in my head, we've got this grade C embryo. So I was just waiting for the 2 weeks to test, and nothing had happened. We did get a positive pregnancy test after the 2 weeks, but then it kind of started with unleashed this massive worry because I have this grade C embryo. So I was just waiting for something to happen. I was waiting for, to miscarry, and I wouldn't tell anybody. I wouldn't speak to anybody about it. I didn't want to tell anyone because I felt like I was going to have to explain myself after this had got taken a different path. And it just caused so much kind of a worry and anxiety. I wouldn't really speak about it with my partner either. I was just like, no, it's not going to happen. It's not going to be. So the longer the pregnancy went on, I just started to think that there's going to be something at some point is not going to be as it should be. So I was like constantly prepared and constantly waiting for something awful to happen. And then kind of in the third trimester, I was, you have all your scans and they're telling you that everything's okay. But still, I just wasn't convinced, and I couldn't enjoy the pregnancy because of being told a very, very simple thing, which I don't blame the clinic at all. It's how they grade things for their own science, but it's how I took on the message of them saying to me, this grade C embryo.
Yeah.
So I decide I have to do everything that I possibly can during pregnancy, during birth, and during the first few years of parenthood to make this the best it can possibly be. However, during pregnancy, all I wanted to eat was sausage rolls and satsumas. So my healthy eating that I'd been carrying out leading up to the IVF, I couldn't eat a green veg. I used to make smoothies in the morning, have a couple of sips, and then want to vomit. I was like, I just want more sausage rolls and more satsumas. But that in itself caused conflict, because I was like, what am I doing? I can't even nourish myself or my baby. And then I was convinced that I had to have this kind of the best birth possible. So I threw myself into hypnobirthing, which was brilliant. And that really, really helped me with some of the stuff that was going on internally. And we did have a lovely birth. It wasn't what I expected or what I had imagined, but however, we did have a lovely birth and I had a healthy baby. However, I've now got a brand new baby who I have been told was a grade C embryo. So I was constantly mapping her development, and I hadn't really realized until maybe she was 4 or 5 how much that had impacted my first few years of parenthood. And I wasn't really aware that that was what it was. It was actually doing some kind of healing work and seeing a therapist after that this came up, that this very small seed had been planted in my head. I took it a certain way, and then now it's kind of like snowballed out of control a little bit. So I was constantly worried and anxious the whole time she was a baby, that she wasn't getting nourishment. There was going to be, something, I was going to lose her. And it was just a really, really difficult time that I just had my blinkers on and I was just going through it. And I wasn't sharing this with anybody at all. And it's kind of, I suppose, when she went to school and I could see her amongst other children, and I was like able to say, I've got a daughter here, and she is happy and she is healthy. And it was kind of, I don't know, maybe the first 4 years of her life that I constantly worried about what she ate, what she was doing, if I was going to lose her because of this initial thing in the beginning. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, Sarah.
Oh my goodness, it really does. I'm so sorry, Jo, that went on for so long for you. Like you say, it's a tiny little seed, just a word that was said, this grade C. And then, where that led your mind to, and how obviously all those thoughts were there because you wanted to support that potential pregnancy and then baby and then child. You wanted to support them in the best way you could and make up for any apparent deficiency that could be there, which is not there, as you can now see. But of course, what a burden that put on you, and what a lot of pressure.
I know.
I can just imagine.
Yeah, and then there's people in clinics all the time, and I didn't at the time they said that. I don't know what else they said to me on that day, or exactly how it was said about this being a grade C. They could have said to me, "There's a perfect chance of of you conceiving and carrying full term and everything will be okay. But all I heard in that moment was, grade C, this isn't going to work. Something bad's going to happen. And I do think in the world of fertility, there are things, diagnosis or just little words that when we're in a vulnerable state, we're looking to these people to kind of solve all of our problems and give us our baby. That often something that they said, we can misconstrue it and make it mean something completely
like you say, yeah, because it's their own medical terminology, it's their own jargon that they use to look at different embryos and compare them and perhaps the likelihood of them then implanting. But yeah, if that embryo does implant and goes on to be a full-term healthy pregnancy, it's really hard to override your thoughts, isn't it? And just accept that everything is okay when that was your first worry. And I noticed what you said as well, Jo, about really keeping it to yourself, and you didn't talk to anyone and you weren't sharing those fears. And of course, we know when we share something and we get other reflections back and other stories back, it may have helped to balance that out for you, but it sounds like you were just too scared to share that and to acknowledge it out loud. You were keeping it all to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there is so much of fertility can become a secret because maybe, we've spoken to people so much about it that you feel like you're oversharing. People don't want to hear, oh, they're sick of hearing it. And we become more and more insular and more kind of locked away. And in fact, I think that sometimes we're not even fully aware of it. I wouldn't say that grade C, the mention of the grade C was particularly in my awareness. And it was only after doing deeper work after with my own healing around it that I started to go, wow, yeah, this is where it came from. And I saw something earlier about somebody having a diagnosis of endometriosis, age 19. And, people will say, well, that means I can't have a baby. But actually, in that moment, we don't really know when they've asked the question, what the doctor said or what has been said surrounding it. It just can be how you have taken what that person has said to you, or maybe what other people say, that eventually you start to believe that in your head. And I think that we create these blocks and for ourselves and these beliefs for ourselves that things are going to be hard.
Yeah, just like you said, before you even tried to conceive, you had that message that as cabin crew and spending so much time in the air and out of time zones and everything, that would cause a problem. So you already had that expectation. And we're not saying whether or not expectation caused the problem, but it definitely, I'm imagining, would create a lot of emotion around it and a lot of fear and stress and worry. So that then when you're told that your embryo isn't optimal either, it just piles on, doesn't it? Things to worry about, and this isn't going to work for us. But you did come through the other side, Jo, and like you said, your little girl grew up to be happy and healthy, and it changed your life in more ways, didn't it? Because it's become your career now. It's become what you do, is supporting others on a fertility journey. Do you think if you have the right support in place, or what kind of support can help us not kind of go to those extremes with the language that we hear or the thoughts that are planted in our head? Are there ways that we can become more present and connect with our own truth and our own clarity that can help us see what's true and what's not true, and find a more calm, and relaxed way through all of this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I didn't even know that there was any kind of fertility coaching around at the time. I mean, my daughter's now 9, but yeah, there was no counselling or any help with the clinic, and I didn't really get any guidance or pointers from the GP. I mean, I wish I'd known that you were around at the time, Sarah, with your EFT, because it would have just been amazing. But I do think often with fertility, we get kind of hooked on it ends up being expensive. We're paying for supplements, we're paying for holistic therapies, all of this physical stuff. And I think had I had more of the mental, the mind-body stuff, it would have been a huge help, because it kind of brings some of the deepest stuff up that we're struggling with at the time, that we've probably been squashing down and not wanting to believe that we're struggling. Because I think it's actually a really courageous and quite a difficult step to admit that you need help emotionally. And I do think one of the good things that's come out of COVID is that there's much more awareness around mental health and people's emotional well-being. And I think people are less afraid to speak out and to get that help. But I would have absolutely loved to have done something like I do with my clients now, because I just love to see them as they come and start, not really that certain maybe. Sometimes I think some come as thinking, right, this is last resort. I'd love to get people much sooner, but to see them starting off and very, very quickly start to have this kind of this change where they're able to stop and look at themselves and go, oh, wow, yeah, I didn't really realize that I was feeling that way. And just for them to be in tune with their emotions, know that it's okay to be feeling the feelings, and look at new ways of helping themselves and how their emotions are wanting to guide them, and letting go of some of the old, outdated beliefs about themselves or about the fertility journey. I think it makes a huge difference.
It really does. And I'm with you there about how COVID has changed how we look at how we take care of ourselves and our emotional well-being and our mental health. And it's made it, much more of a normal, accepted, everyday thing to talk about, for sure. And also on the fertility side, wasn't it interesting how, obviously fertility clinics closed down over COVID, just like all hospitals and clinics did. And when fertility clinics started to open up, it was a very, it was even had its own piece on the news websites that fertility clinics are now open, because it was seen as such a difficult thing to put on pause for so many people, that they wouldn't be able to have IVF, wouldn't be able to grow their family if that's the only way they could do it. It was being cut off from them completely. So I was kind of encouraged that was being shown as a standalone news story, is that fertility clinics are now open, and that's a positive thing for all these people who've been waiting. That acknowledgement of how hard it really is to have to go through treatment and not conceive your baby if and when you believe you will. So yeah, I'm hoping that the tide is gradually turning, and we'll keep having conversations like this, and my podcast will run for as long as it needs to, and just keep talking about the emotional side, because it's such a huge step in life. We think about it just being about getting pregnant and conceiving, which of course can take its time for you. Like you said, for you, it was 4 years, I think you said, didn't you? You had IVF.
Yeah, just over.
Yeah, and then you've got the whole huge, roller coaster to go through with IVF, as you discovered, how challenging that was. But that's not the end of the story, is it? You've got the actual pregnancy and then parenting, and it's such a hugely big, important thing that we do. It's the biggest life change that we do, isn't it? It's become parents for the first time. So why are we not supporting ourselves emotionally, and why is society not supporting people emotionally as they go through that huge transition in life? Because if you start that, like you said, in a very vulnerable way, and already having doubts and fears and thinking you've got to kind of give your whole self over to give this embryo, this baby, the best chance because of its low grading or whatever, that's such a massive toll that it takes on your emotional and physical well-being and your life as a whole. And then you have to start parenting a newborn, which is full of sleepless nights and everything else as standard. But if you're starting that from a really delicate place where you're already feeling like it's all going wrong and you're expecting it to go wrong, gosh, that woman needs building up and supporting more than ever, for sure.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And I think with the fertility coaching as well, all of the stuff that I now go through with my clients, obviously I embody it, I live it, I use all of the tools and techniques, or certainly most of the tools and techniques, regularly. And I think, had I had that in the very beginning, just to kind of set me free of this kind of anxiety that, again, I have had squashed down, just think it would have seen me all the way through the pregnancy, and it would have seen me through the early years of parenthood using exactly the same things. Because I think all of this stuff that we use as mind body coaches, you can apply it to absolutely everything. Yes, it's brilliant in fertility, but it's equally as brilliant in parenthood, in life. And it's actually by me becoming a coach, it's changed our whole lives as a family, because I use the same stuff, the same tools and techniques with my children, with my husband as well. So he's been on the journey with us as well. And it's been amazing. And I wish that I had known about it then, because it would have been a lot easier. But I'm just so grateful and so happy that I do know about it now, and that I've been able to reach people and have them just kind of, and it's not for them, it's not even been about getting pregnant, it's just having their life back, where they're able to enjoy things again. And one of my friends, actually, who I coached, she had been on a journey for about 9 years, and she had gone out for her 40th birthday for dinner with her husband. And she said the thought of going out for dinner before we had done the coaching together used to fill her with fear, because she didn't know what she was going to be able to eat, what would be on the menu, because she was following such a strict diet. And she went out, and she said, she phoned me when she got back in and cried and just said, I've had the best dinner ever, because I've gone out and I've enjoyed myself. I had a glass of wine. I looked around the room and I was able to take in the whole of the room, the whole of the atmosphere, instead of sitting in fear, pretending that I was having a good time. And that for me was just one of the best things, and one of the best examples of just letting yourself go. Because although she was doing everything physically to, achieve her dream, by doing everything physically, she was actually causing herself a huge amount of stress, because she was unable to kind of see out of the physical. But as soon as she was able to relax and go, actually, I can live my life as well as that. And that for me is what it's about. It's just getting life back, to enjoy life while waiting for the baby. That, the powerful word, I haven't had my baby yet.
That is so, so important, and it should be prioritized. And we're, shouting about it loudly to encourage people to prioritize themselves on their fertility journeys, for sure. But even if you look at it as then continuing to support what you do next, because it's very hard to keep going, especially if people need multiple fertility treatments, IVF cycle after IVF cycle, to keep going if you feel like you don't have your life and it's all been taken over by fertility and treatment. The more you can connect with yourself, your partner, your friends, the things that light you up and bring you joy along the way, and have the whole mix of everything going on, it's going to be more sustainable, isn't it? I often talk about like a fertility journey needs to be sustainable. It needs to last for as long as it needs to last, because none of us can know whether it will be the first treatment when it works, or whether it will take a few more, maybe a few changes of direction along the way. And it's so hard to keep going if you feel depleted, isn't it? And like life is really, really hard. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I know there's lots of different ways that you work with people, Jo. The thing that brought us together was the tapping, EFT, which I know you love just as much as I do. It's amazing, isn't it? Tapping as a technique, it looks too good to be true. It looks too simplistic that you would just tap on points on the face and the upper body and on the hands, and that in itself would bring about change. But it does work, doesn't it? People often say to me that it's like magic. It's like, how did that work? I suddenly feel like my old self, and I've let go of all the emotions that were so heavy and that I didn't need, and I've got this lightness back and this focus back. It's that kind of modality, isn't it, that then can help people find what they really need, rather than us saying, well, why don't you just try these things to help you relax? If that's not for them, if a technique can actually get them back in touch with themselves, so they know what they need to do for themselves, then that it feels much more authentic, doesn't it, for them?
Absolutely. And tapping it's just been a real game changer as well when I started to introduce that into the coaching session. So I combine that with hypnosis and other mindful tools and techniques. But for me, when I discovered tapping, it was just like it just brought everything together. And just seeing people have this very, very quick, you can see the change in someone's face when you're with them, can't you? They're often, the skin maybe doesn't look, the eyes look a little bit lost. And even during a 45-minute, 1 hour session of tapping, then you start to see people come alive again. Their eyes light up, the skin changes, and it's just like they've used their own magic fingers. People say, wow, that's amazing. How does that work? And just to see that shift without anything too obvious in 1 hour is incredible.
It is. And it is that shift, isn't it? A shift in perspective of what we choose to focus on and what meaning that we give things. Like you said about hearing grade C and hearing them talking all their medical jargon about what that meant. And then you attached your own meaning to that. Whereas if you had been able to step in with a technique like EFT, I'm sure that would have got you to, that calmer, clearer, more rational, maybe ask a few more questions as well. That's what I find people do often when they stop being so panicked about something and they feel calmer and clearer. They go back to their doctor and they say, hang on a minute, I'm not quite sure what that meant. Could you explain it to me again? Because they know they need that extra information to be fully informed and not just jump to their own, fearful conclusions. So it helps every step of the way for sure. And I'd love, Jo, for our listeners to be able to have a little taste of how you work. And I know you've got something on your website that they can sample. Is that right?
I have, yes. So I've got a forest relaxation. So you can go to my website, which is jodalziel.co.uk. And on there, I have got a free downloadable track, which is a forest relaxation. So it just takes you on a guided meditation or relaxation through a forest. And it's a lovely meditation to listen to at any time in the day. It's quite short. So, and you can check out what else I do on there as well. But feel free to go and download that. It would be lovely.
Beautiful, Jo. I just love the idea of traveling in your mind to a forest to do a meditation. Thank you. That sounds stunning. Wonderful. What we will do is we've quoted the website there, but we will also put the link in the show notes. So wherever you're listening to the podcast, you'll be able to click directly through to Jo's website as well and download that meditation. Thank you for sharing that. And where are the best ways to find you online as well? Where on social media do you spend your time?
So I am on Instagram. I would like to be on it more than I am. I'm getting there. A bit sporadic with it. So on Instagram, I am Dalziel Jo.
Fantastic. So we'll put the link to that as well for you then. Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us, Jo. It's been really, really lovely to have a longer chat with you. And I was thinking originally that I just wanted to get on the phone and have a chat with you and hear more about you. And then I thought, actually, why not we record it for the podcast and I can hear about your story and hear about the reason why you do what you do and offer all this beautiful support. So I'm really pleased that we clicked record before our conversation and now are able to share this with everybody else, because
me too.
Yeah, it's so important we keep having these conversations and that people don't, as we said right at the start, that they don't feel alone and that it's totally normal to be feeling this way, feeling this amount of stress or whatever it is, because it's an abnormal situation. It's a situation that people didn't expect to find themselves in, isn't it? But it doesn't mean that it's the only way to feel. And, you and I and lots of other people that we work alongside have so many tools and techniques that can really turn things around. So I hope that if anyone's listening now, so you take one thing away, it's that inspiration to start, taking care of the whole emotional side and taking care of you, because you are very, very important. So thank you, Jo, for joining me in that message today. It's been really lovely to chat with you.
Thank you, Sarah. I've really enjoyed it.
I hope you enjoyed listening to my chat with Jo, and remember that the podcast is now on a short break while we plan and record another amazing run of episodes for you. I'd love to hear any requests you have for topics for the podcast or suggestions for guests you'd like me to talk to. Do send your podcast requests to my podcast assistant, Jan at fertilemindset.com. To make sure that you're notified as soon as we're back, be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen in. And while you're subscribing, if you'd like to write us a review too on Apple Podcasts or give us a star rating on Apple, Spotify or Audible, that would be hugely appreciated. Reviews mean so much to podcasters as they help our shows get in front of more people who need the support and would like to listen in. Thank you for being with us for the first 71 episodes of the Fertile Mindset podcast, and I look forward to speaking to you again in a short while. Take care and see you soon. I'm so pleased you're listening to the Fertile Mindset podcast, and now I would love to invite you to join us in the Fertile Mindset Sanctuary. The Sanctuary is my fertility support membership, which is focused on taking care of you and helping you enjoy your life while you wait for your baby. In the Sanctuary, I'll guide you through using an amazing technique called EFT or tapping, and you'll soon be feeling less stressed and more joyful. If you're not already in the Sanctuary, do come and join us today, because the best time to start receiving support on your fertility journey is always right now. Honestly, it makes such a difference to have good quality emotional support and techniques that you can pick up and use yourself whenever you need them. Go to fertilemindset.com/sanctuary to join us today. I look forward to hopefully seeing you there and at the next episode of the Fertile Mindset podcast.